Hi, this is Andrew Sears, and I'm here today with John Frank, who is the author of the textbook that you're using in City Vision's Fundraising 101 course. He also has presented several other lectures in the course, and today he's going to be giving an overview of a lot of the key concepts that are covered in the course and really connecting that with practical experience. So, John, you've been doing development for how long and development consulting for how long?
Well, I've been in development, I think about 37, 38 years, and it was about 30 years of consulting and develop these tools because we're going to really talk about tools today, or we're going to talk about development 101 in the context of tools and really develop these with clients as I solved problems and then thought about how can we use this tool to simplify and make it usable for the client. And that's how I developed them.
Yeah, that's great. And how many organizations have you worked with over the years? I know it's quite a few. It's probably hard for you to remember the exact number, but roughly.
It actually is. I probably in the 75 to 100 range.
Yeah.
There are some years I'd have 10 to 12 clients. Others there might be just three or four for a period of time. But through the years, quite a few.
Yeah, and John, I feel like is kind of at the center of our values. He has a ton of experience. He's very practical in what he does. He works a lot with ministry, so he can do the Christian integration. Did his doctoral program on development, and has a lot of experience. So thank you, John, for being willing to share. So if you want to just jump into your presentation and start sharing your screen, then you can go ahead and do that now. And we really appreciate you sharing today.
Glad to be here. Glad to do it. Okay, are we there?
Yep,
All right. Well, let's jump right in. Oh, let's see. Well, I'm not at the right place.
there
There
you
we
go.
go. It just delayed a second. This is an overview slide of what I call development strategic planning by relationships. I was working for years, struggled a little bit with the word fundraising. Is that just getting money from people, or do we really care about them as stewards? And do we really, my definition of development is creating opportunities to connect God's people to God's work. Well, I came up with the question: how do we do that? Is it just fundraising strategies, just letters, just asking, just this? How do we really look at the relationship with a Christian or someone who wants to please God with their stewardship? So this is what I came up with. Moving from left to right, first of all, development is integrated with the organizational vision. In other words, it's not just about development saying, oh, let's raise money for this. It's about where is God leading the mission and vision of the organization. That is the priority. And then you say, okay, let's say in that growth of this organization, we're going to move from a budget of $100,000 to $500,000 over the next period of time. Could be 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. Then you say, well, what does development have to look like to do that? The age old, well, let's just squeeze more blood out of the same turnip. No, it doesn't work. You can't raise more money doing the same things. So I started looking at, well, what are the main relationships that we work with? And if you go over two columns, you'll see major donor strategies, core donor, which are monthly, repetitive donors, impulse donors, which I'll define, and then new donors, acquiring them. And I said, well, how do we find those? Well, we have to do donor research. We have to get to know who our people are on our list. We then have to segment them. In other words, divide them into who they are and how they respond. And then we have to create a strategy by that target segment. Now, in a couple more slides, I'll go in more detail of the characteristics of each one of those four groups. But when you put those together, what do you have? You have a comprehensive, integrated strategy. In other words, if we believe from Deuteronomy that each of you should give in proportion to the way that the Lord your God has blessed you, okay, out of Deuteronomy, we know that major donors, that people that give more, might be able to give more, and maybe in God's eyes should give more. Now, I'm not making judgments here. I'm just basing it on that principle. We look at some people, they're better off budgeting a little bit every month. Those are core donors. Impulse donors, they don't plan. Okay, we'll get, and then new donors. So what I'm saying in a comprehensive integrated strategy is to try to have some strategy, at least one for each one of these relationships. Now here's the big aha, and you should remember this from the whole course. One size does not fit all. One size does not fit all. If you're doing the same strategy with every one of relationships, you're leaving people out, you're leaving people behind, you're offending people, and you're just not raising as much funding if in relationships. So remember that. That is an evil, trying to do the same to everybody. Now, the final column over to the right, we aren't going to get into a lot of it today, but it is your accountability. You can project 5 years of income. Where are we going to grow? Which strategy? And then that's produced into this year's strategy, the annual projected income, your budget. Then you make a calendar out of that. Then when you are, we're going to go a little bit into, so how do you report that and analyze it? Then you're going to evaluate that strategy. Did that work? Did that special event work for major donors? Did that direct mail work? And then you put that all together, you evaluate it and put it in a written plan. And so that in general is everything in planning your development strategy, looking at relationships at the core. Any quick question, Andrew?
This is great. And for the students who are looking at this, this is a rough outline of the process we're going to be using in the course. Some of the arrows may be in a little bit different order. And we're going to go a little bit more into activities than is shown here. But this is the basic, diagram that we're going to be following in the course. So thanks, John.
All right, now we'll go into some details. I said relationships. You may or may not have heard of the donor pyramid, but basically it's the numerical numbers of donors at each level. And every nonprofit, whether it's a church, a nonprofit organization, a faith-based organization, your donor base creates a pyramid. Now, you may be one that deals with direct mail mostly. Well, guess what? Then you have more impulse donors, and the top of your donors is real narrow. So this depicts what would be a balanced donor strategy with your top major donors at the top of the donor pyramid. They are smaller in number, but more in dollars. Your monthly donors are now in your next group. These are the people that, again, they're budget conscious. Well, let me back up a minute. I think I'll do a little more explanation in this slide. Major donors, I generally define as giving $1,000 or more per calendar year. I say calendar year, not fiscal year, because donors think in calendar year. Major donors historically give mostly at the end of the year. They make pledges during the year, and then they give in November, December. So they would remember last year what they gave you. Now, also, let's see, the other thing I was going to say about major donors is they're not impulsive. They plan. Maybe they own their own business. They've been successful. They're giving away bigger dollars. They may ask more questions. They may ask for more of a case for support, which we'll get to. And so that's your major donors. You have to deal with them one-to-one. Now, you may send all your major donors a letter, but they still would be personalized, okay? That's opposed to a letter to all your impulse donors. Let's say you have 20,000 of them, you send them all the same letter, okay? In between those, we have what are the monthly donors. And I worked in this when I worked in an inner city mission, and I saw all these faithful givers. So we created a program. It happened to be called the 99-1 Club, based on the scripture. If you had 100 sheep and one left, one was lost, you would leave the 99, find that one lost sheep. So the idea was these monthly partners were so critical. And I use the example my wife and I gave to an inner city youth ministry, dealt with street kids and everything. We gave monthly for 17 years. So the idea is not that you want monthly. The idea is that that's their way of giving. They budget. They're conservative in terms of using their funds wisely. They don't want little trinkets sent to them. I'm sorry, it may sound disrespectful, but don't send them Jesus junk. In other words, they're aware of every dollar. If it's $20 a month, $50 a month, I had some all the way up to $1,000 a month. They're aware that you need to spend that wisely. Okay, so those are monthly donors. Impulse donors, they respond to direct mail and special events. Why? Because they don't plan. They don't say, gee, dear, let's, in our giving this year, respond to the direct mail in April and July and November. No, they don't think that way. That's why the critical issue for impulse donors is frequency. That's why people, when you understand impulse donors, you would send them frequent reminders. But some people get upset and said, oh, you sent them too much mail. We need to cut out the mail. Well, that would work for major donors and monthly partners. They shouldn't get all that mail because they've already made a commitment to you. But if you stop your communication to impulse donors, you're basically going to forget about them and they're going to give to somebody else. So you are not offending impulse donors if you send them a monthly appeal. Because there are certain organizations like feeding programs, like children's programs, like rescue missions, they are receiving donor gifts every day. And that's what impulse donors are. And then the other one are new donors. What do we have to do to help them make that psychological leap from thinking good thoughts about your organization to actually writing a check? And that's a lot of thinking. It's part art and science. It's finding the names and those kind of things.
So,
all right.
yeah,
Go ahead.
John, I have a question, especially on that last part,
Okay.
because I think a lot of organizations understand, okay, if you have a big list and, you know, you can start to work people, you know, through the list and how to treat the different groups. And, you know, but how do you build the list? How do you get more new donors?
All right. That is a difficult task.
So there's two levels of that. One is people who are on your list but not giving. And then the other is, you know, people who aren't on your list. So let me reword it. What are the main sources for new donors for most organizations you work with?
All right.
Is this volunteering? Is this, you know, where are they getting these new donors?
Okay. On your lists of most medium to large organizations where you have in the 10, 20, 50, 100,000 names, there will always be a percentage that are these first three groups: major donors, monthly donors, impulse donors. Then what you have are lapsed donors, meaning they gave at some time in the past, or non-donors. Somehow you've gotten their name, but they've never given to you. So maybe they came to a concert, or came to an event, or they came to something, or through your board member, somebody, you got their name. Okay, in the old days, and I do mean old days, we used to get church directories of names. Not anymore, not for about 15, 20 years now. You wouldn't even think of giving those names to a nonprofit. But there are different ways. You go and speak to a church. All right, so that's about the ones that are on your list. And how do you get them activated?
Well, let's talk more of the on your list. So
that's what I'm going to say.
Okay,
Lapsed donors are on your list, and they gave it. Let's say we're looking at fall of 2020. So you might consider people who gave in 2019 and 2018, even though they haven't given in those, they're still recent. But to consider lapsed donors, you may say, oh, they haven't given in since 2017 or before.
Well, let me talk about the case. So let's say a ministry's only been around for a couple years, and they have, you know, an email list and a mailing list of, you know, 500 people.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay, And how do you grow that list is what I'm getting at.
I'm just doing the lapsed donors because, again, the lapsed donors are a higher percentage of reactivating than it is those other names that have never given. So I'm taking them in sequence, Andrew.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
The ones that are lapsed had a previous relationship. So your goal is to try and provoke them with some type of project to get them to give a single gift again. Now, the other names that Andrew's talking about, let's say you have 20,000 names, but 10,000 of them or 7,000 of them or 5,000 of them have never given a gift.
I'm saying a new organization. Say someone's just starting. Say you have 0 names. How are
Okay.
they going to build that? Let's
All
start
right.
with the most simple. They have 0 names, and how are
All
they
right.
going to build that list?
Okay. I was going to come to that second. Can I go
Okay,
ahead?
sorry. Yeah. That's fine.
I'm sorry. We're working this out,
Okay,
folks, because there's
gotcha.
so many questions about new donors.
Yep.
So I'm saying now the best time to activate a donor to be a name to become a donor is in the fall. Generally, October, November are the best times to get to give a gift. So in your lapsed and non-donors on your list, you would write to them in October, November, asking them for a gift. All right, so those are the ones on your list. Now let's go to, you're a brand new organization. What are the ways that you can find new names? Because remember, they're names before they're donors. And you have to think of it that way. Okay, let's go through that. What we found, I've got a slide coming up about the donor relationship, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But in this slide, I'm going to actually say what the newest trend is. The newest trend is, rather than starting as an impulse donor and moving up to the top, it really is coming in parallel. In other words, major donors who give over $1,000 they're going to run in the circles with other major donors. So if you're going to ask them to help you with some new names, you might have an event at their home. I've had events with major donors where they could fit 20 cars in their driveway. Okay, so all those people that come are an acquirement of new names that are most likely at the major donor level. That's a small donor event, okay? Now, if you have an annual event like a banquet or this or that kind of event, it is always helpful to go to your regular donors who come to that and say, if there's a table of 8 and you and your spouse are coming, would you fill the other 3 couples with people who have never been to our event? So you get your faithful donors to try and invite other people to the table, in which case at the event we'll ask them to come on our mailing list, or we get their name before with having tickets or something. The next way is going to be through your staff and board, is asking them to bring people to an event or to include in a startup mailing if you're in a startup situation. Now, the most, how do I say this? The most fruitful, but also the most expensive, but also the hard to do at startup, is to rent a list of names. There are brokers all over the place who will rent you names for a one-time use. And that's the donor acquisition season. When I worked at a mission in a major city, we would we would rent 600,000 names in this city. Now, none of these are merged and purged, so none of these are currently on our list. And we could send them one appeal. You only rent the names for one use. And the response rates back when I was doing it was around 3 to 4%. In other words, we made money. But the acquisition today in the mail is 1 to 2%. So you basically, when you rent a list and start out by renting names and the broker helps you choose which names, you break even. The real goal is to get those names on your mailing list. Now, those are the basics of how to start a list. Andrew, did you have another specific question on it?
That's extremely helpful. So if someone wanted to Google, renting a list of names, what would they Google? What's the term that they would be looking for?
It would be direct mail brokers or name acquisition brokers. And there's a number of them.
For fundraising, probably, right?
What's that?
For fundraising?
Yes. Yes.
Or do you just do a general one?
Well, there's different things. The majority of those brokers are going to get you names off of magazine sales. Now,
Okay.
magazine sales have really changed, so I have not mentioned how to use social media.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in that, but when you look at new names, you can look at the GoFundMe's, you can look at the Facebooks, you can look at any of those things where someone will give you their name. Now, the problem with that is they're giving you their online name, which we find changes faster than mailing addresses used to
Right.
change back in the day. So you have to find a way to get their online name turn into an actual address and a
Right.
person.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm much more familiar with a lot of the impulse campaigns, Giving Tuesday, and we have this current crisis that we're going to try to address on Facebook or things like that. So,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that seems like that's a reasonable support. I mean, a reasonable approach too. So,
Well,
okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's
here's the
helpful.
thing to remember. If the major donor is a scoped sniper rifle, the impulse and new donors are shotguns.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're focusing on donors right up there, but when you do new donors and you rent, let's say you rent 10,000 names and you get 1%, so what's that, 100 names?
Yep.
You know, yeah, you may say, oh boy, that's not many, but you have to do it year after year. And sometimes we used to do it in Easter. Some brokers are advising doing it more times a year. So there's different times, but remember the psychology. You're trying to get someone who may know a little of your name, or they may know a lot about you, or like the group I started with, they may already be on your list to get your newsletter, but
Yep.
they've never given a gift. So there's different psychological hurdles to become a member of your giving family.
Right. Yeah. And one thing I just want to throw in, I'd ask you this in advance, but you said, and this obviously varies based on organization, but a rough estimate for an organization is that 10% of the donors might be major donors, 20% monthly, 30 to 40% impulse donors, and then 30 to 40% lapsed.
That's if you're balanced.
Yeah, yeah, if
That's
you're
if
balanced,
you're
and
balanced.
some are going to be different, obviously. But
Yeah,
I think it's
depends
just
how you
helpful
start
for
out.
organizations to think through, like, okay, where should I be doing a better job to a certain extent?
And
Because you
we'll
want
be
to try to
talking about
convert.
that.
I mean, part of the reason why people convert, try to get a lot of people on the monthly donors, is impulse donors. There's an expense for every time you're getting them to give. But if someone's put you on their, every monthly, their bank's going to send you a check or something like that, or it's automatically happening through their credit card, there's no expense to keep
Right.
that going. You just need to be communicating with them to maintain the relationship. Whereas impulse donors, you might have to pay to reacquire them
Well, let me
more.
add something
So,
to that, and it's called the giving curve. When we start, let's say we're starting at September. September through December is the highest giving in nonprofits across the board, churches, nonprofits. Then January, February, it starts to level out and go down. And you then get to May, June, July, August, you're at the lowest curve. You are generally losing money if you do too many appeals in June, July, August. So you need to, and that's part of getting into the details of direct mail, when to send out a direct mail appeal that gets the highest percentage. But at the same time, if you got a good monthly partner program, that's giving you the June, July financial stability that the impulse donors won't give you.
yeah,
Now, let me give another scenario. Let's say you got some major donors. All right, you got really blessed with some people, maybe high tech or a business, and you came in with some really big major donors. You must begin to broaden your base, because one $25,000 donor that they give you every December, if they suddenly say, I can't do that this year, that's a lot of impulse donors to make up that $25,000. So
right.
it's real important to look for a balanced donor pyramid.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. All right. I've asked a ton of questions on that one, but I'm going to let you jump into your other slide. So
All
thanks,
right, here
John.
we go. Now, you've had already some study on what is the case for support. As you noted in my development strategic plan, we had the 5-year plan and the 1-year plan. So this we're going to stick with as the 1-year plan, but I came up with this for a capital campaign. Now, I'm not sure where you are in your studies, but annual or let me just do this quick definition. Current giving or annual giving is every month, every year, and it continues forever. Capital campaign is usually a 3 to 5 year project where you're only raising funds till you hit the goal and then it's over. Planned giving is where people leave you in their wills and other instruments to leave a legacy of what they believe in with your organization, what you believe in, okay? So we are now going to talk about the case for support for the annual fund, which is your mission and vision. What are we doing? Why are we opening the doors? Now, as you can see in the green on the left, those are all the rationale for a rescue mission, an inner city rescue mission that deals with homelessness, hunger, addiction recovery, and transition. All right, so I'm going to go through briefly how I determine the boxes in the middle, which is what you'll be writing. The need is, what did God call you to do? What is the need? It's not the money. That's not the need. It's not the finances. It is, how are you touching people? To the right, it says, what's the heart of the problem? And it lists some things: family breakdown, addiction, economy, homelessness. To me, the goal of writing the need is to grab the donor's heart and break it. In other words, break their heart with the heart of the problem. So they say, oh my gosh, is there anything that can be done? Remember, folks, students, giving is a heart issue. It may be logical to some people, but they add up and they feel good about giving. Giving is from the heart. So you have to grab their heart. And they say, is there any hope for a solution? You say, yes. We've been given a solution to this need. We have cutting edge strategies, and we have a proven program. And this is where I say the power of God comes in. This is where, when you are working with children or medical, where the power of God through Jesus Christ goes through each worker, that's where you bring in your faith, is under the solution. We aren't just doing this because, oh, wow, we can make money and do something as a nonprofit. No, we believe that God has brought us to touch people's lives with what he's entrusted us with. Could be a Christian school, could be a Christian camp, could be any of these faith-based things. But, you know, when you deal with an addicted person, that's when God uses you. When you deal with a child from the inner city at the camp and they accept Christ at the Thursday night fireside, that's the power of Christ. So that's your solution. Then you say, well, what do you do? Well, we've proven success. Here are our programs, all that we have done, and why we are the best to solve the problem. So these are our programs. It might be programs A for men, programs B for women, and program C for children. Excuse me. Now we look at, okay, the first 3 boxes are critical to write. Now you say, well, what do you want from me? Now, in a capital campaign, we go to the campaign, but this for the annual fund would say the annual fund, where it says the campaign. And this is what we're thinking for this year. Let's say our budget is $1.2 million. Okay, that's our budget. And our overall strategy, let's say we're a Christian camp, we're going to do this many camps and this many campers and this many adult things. So you outline from your program what it will cost. And then you say, well, what are you asking of us? Now, if this is a major donor, you may be asking them for a specific amount. You may say, we'd like to ask for $10,000 or whatever. And that is well thought out, the project description. Or you may say, oh, we need a new bus. All right, the bus costs, I don't know what a bus costs, let's say $75,000. And you might put a giving tree, and we're going to show you what that is, for how to raise $75,000, and we need 1 gift of $25,000, 2 gifts of $10,000, etc. So that's the project description. Then the final 2 things are historical highlights and our administration references. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they put those 2 things at the start and say, hey, look at us, we're so great, here's why you should give us money. That should be the last 2 things you do. Very quickly, in a foundation grant book, if you use that as an example as a major donor, what is the first thing they write? They write, this is our name, these are our board of directors, and this is what we give to. That's the need. So you're going to say, the first thing you want to say, this is what we've been called to do. Does that touch your heart? Like to a major donor, like to a foundation. That's why foundations that see the historical highlights in administration first, they say, you're not even listening to what we give to. Okay, just a quick aside on that. So that's the case for support. Now, it may look like a lot, but I just do like one page of the first three boxes. Maybe you might have a couple pages of the need or something. And then the campaign is one page. The project might be one page. Historical highlights could be a couple pages depending, but I just list the year you were founded, new executive director, added this program, just real simple historical highlights. And then the administration references is, do you belong to a group of rescue missions? Do you belong to a group of Christian schools? Do you belong to the Better Business Bureau? I list all those things that you are memberships of to show your stability and show your community mindedness. Okay. So, Andrew, anything you wanted to bring out?
Yeah, I'm just going to comment. I think the book goes over the case for support, but I think, John, what you're really presenting is the book gives you the facts about the case for support. What you're really communicating is the heart. And to me, I've done tons of grant writing, and this is a little bit different order than how most grants are. Often most grants will start with history and organization, but this order makes sense if you're looking at it from the how do you move someone's heart. What you're doing is you're saying the need is the thing that's closest to their heart, not even your solution to the need. It's the need, right? So,
right.
And then you get more and more to the thinking of like, okay, and here are the, seals of approval that you have on, and, the thinking comes in there at some point, right? But
Well,
you
there's
lead
logic to
with the
this, I
heart.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that if people understand that, and they understand that, it's not just you have the facts, it's you're trying to be persuasive. I think that really helps. So,
Yeah, and I
okay.
want to just say one more thing to tie it into City Vision University. We're about the widow and the orphan. We're about the poor. We're about the people that Jesus said, the children, bring them to me. So to really know that this way of doing it, really, it's for the steward to understand that we believe we're doing things in all our ministries that really breaks Jesus' heart.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, yeah, you can keep going.
All right. Now, this is a very simple thing, but sometimes we overlook it. And we're talking now of more of a one-to-one relationship, okay? And it is the whole idea. First, you identify who the person is, and then next, you gather information. Where are they in the community? Other things they, have done. Do they go to your church? Whatever. Children's age business. Then you find out what they're interested in. Have they volunteered before? Have they this? Have they that? They generally give to, medical things, or they give to, education, different kinds of categories. And then you try and get them involved. And you say, well, sometimes we want people to come to our boards, or we have a subcommittee, an advisory committee, or something where we get to know them, or different kinds of things. They may chair a table at our banquet or those kind of things. Then when we've seen these things, we learned about them, we can invite them to invest. The biggest mistake I've found is arrogance on the part of Christian leaders. And that is, we've identified something, we've done God's work, let's ask them for money. And we go right from identification to investment. And we assume we know this person. And we assume all that just because we're doing God's work, of course they're going to give us money. And there were some years where that arrogance really hurt us in our Christian leadership, in our nonprofits, even in our churches. So to me, it's the result of a lack of stewardship education all the way back to seminary. But the point is, this is about the donor. This is about connecting them. This is about finding out how God is leading them. Okay, next one.
Yeah, let me ask some questions on this one. So, honestly, I think this is a really good point, and it's one that I need to think about. And a lot of this gets down to intuitively, when someone is ready. But on the information and in assessing their interest, how much of this are you doing with like databases versus having a conversation with them, or maybe if they're introduced to you by a friend, their friends? How are you determining that?
Oh, wonderful consultant's answer. It depends.
Well, tell me some examples. It's a
I know. I
yeah,
will, Andrew. I just have to give consultants answers. But the point is, if it's a major donor, that will define the strategy of how you do it. If it's a direct mail donor or monthly partner, there might be a different way you do
yeah.
that.
Let's assume major donor in this
All
case.
right. What I'm going to do is postpone your question to one of my future slides that I'll answer that question. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
I'm going to go into more detail in a future one. Let me see where
Okay.
it's this one's. No, well, no, I'll be back. Yeah. All
Okay.
right. Was this the next one? Yeah. All right. So this is just, if you think of the donor pyramid, this is one half of it. That's the only reason for creating this, is to understand, if someone is brand new to your organization, do you have a welcome packet? Do you have something you can say, hey, I see this is your first gift. We're going to send you our newsletter. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. This is how can we pray for you? You can pray for us. Now, in sophisticated professional direct mail strategies, they will start an intro series of their top 3 appeals. If they give a second gift, yes, they go into the appeals group to start to get appeals on a regular basis. If after 3 of their best appeals, they don't give another gift, they go into the newsletter only. This is a way to prevent wasting money on all kinds of appeals if the people haven't given when you've asked them basically 4 times. So then from there, if they're responding to appeals, maybe they give, you look at what's called frequency, maybe they give 2.5 gifts a year. Okay. Well, you could say to them, wait a minute, I'll just back up. Maybe they give 6, 7, 8 gifts a year. There are people that do that. They give every time they get a letter, and then they get the receipt, and they send in another gift with the response device, or the receipt, I should say. That's one. What we do is we do an invitation series, and it's a full strategy, and it's my book, The Monthly Partner, to invite them to become a monthly partner. If they're giving 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times a year, it's not that big a jump for them to say, if we make it easy for you, like you said, Andrew, now I'll show my age. When we first did this, we mailed them reminders. Well, we don't do that anymore. It's either digitally, or it's bank automatic. What is that? ACH, or et cetera, et cetera. But it's automatic that you're going to be getting gifts from them every month, and it will be multiple years. If you find people are giving anything over $83.33, guess what? They're a major donor. That's over $1,000 a year. I think I did my math right.
Yeah,
So
probably.
in other words, if you have someone give you $100 a month, $150 a month, this is not rare, folks. And they give that to you. They're a major donor. So how do you deal with them? Do you treat them as a monthly partner? Do you treat them as a major donor? Here comes the consulting answer, Andrew. It depends. What you do is you get to know them. You may find someone who owns a company, is really wealthy, but through their family giving, they're doing $150 a month to help the homeless or sponsor a child in a ministry. Now, they may give you that $100 a month, but their company might be giving you $5,000 every December. You see, you might have the same family, but have different motivations. So what do? You ask them. You call them and you say, hi, you're doing the monthly. We're so thankful you're part of this. And then occasionally give this gift. How can we best communicate with you what we're doing and how your gifts are being used? I have a whole process that I get board members involved in and talking to donors where it's not an ask, it's a question of how are we doing and da da da, and the people love it. They love to talk to you and say things and say, well, this is what we prefer, and it works really well. So this is just a donor relationship ladder, and again, this goes against what's the big evil? One size does not fit all. So this shows you you can't do the same thing with everybody. Okay? All right. Now we'll go to this one. Now, this is a major donor process chart. And I had a friend of mine who I helped him start his ministry, and it was with families, and he was a former football player, so everybody wanted to talk to him. Year 2, 3, 4, 5, everybody. And he said, John, do I have to ask for money every time I meet with someone? I said, no. And I created this chart. So I was a full-time major donor rep for a Christian university. So I was out in the road and, talking, and I had a list of 100, 125 names. This is a major donor rep. Some of them have up to 150, 200 names. All right, so this is a way to process your work with your major donors. First of all, you see the square major donor prospect. Prospect being the key word. They are not on your list. They've not given to you. As opposed to major donor in there in the middle, they are your current major donors. They have been, they may have been the last 2 or 3, 4 years, but they're on your list. So let's go back. You're planning to go meet with someone or call them on the phone or an email. What's your topic? What do you talk about? Do you have to ask them for money? I say no. Get acquainted. Ask them questions. Fill them in an organizational info. Things that it's important. Again, if they're a major donor, they may want to know, well, who's on your board? Well, what's your annual budget? Well, what's your percentage of fundraising? They may be more informed than a direct mail donor who gives you approximately, 10 to 12 seconds opening the mail before they're going to respond. Okay, so very different mindset with a major donor. And then the other thing is find out information from them. What are, I see Bill, you were introduced to me by Andrew. How do you know Andrew? And we're a nonprofit here and work with many people. What are some of the, if you think this is appropriate, what are some of the causes that your heart goes to that you maybe support? Those are any kind of questions. So there, Andrew, is your question for new donors. How do we know what to say? It's these kind of things. Come prepared. You don't have to ask for money in the first time you talk to them. Get acquainted, find out about them, and let them know some important things about your ministry. So that goes back to what do we do with to acquire a new donor? This would be how, now this could be at a lunch meeting, this could be at a phone call, this could be at a special event, this could be dropping by their office, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, let's go to the major donor. Here's all the things you can talk about. And again, it's important. There might be let me just say this about major donors. They're eccentric, okay? They can say, I'm going to give you every November. They can say, I want you to call me every year on my birthday. Or they can say, I only want you to come and meet with me when the moon is full and wear a blue dress. And that only works for some of us. But that's my other consultant funny joke that I usually do. But the point is that you never know until you try. I was teaching a major donor course, and a couple, they're retired and they had done well, so they were ambassadors for the Christian university, and they told a story of coming out and they didn't get the gift. And she said, "What do? We failed." And how do we deal with our failure? And I said, well, you didn't fail. Tell me what you learned. What did you learn that he gives to? He doesn't give to you. So what did you talk? You have to look at this as relationships. Right. Now, thank you and appreciation. It's sometimes said that you should thank a donor 8 times for every gift. But one of them that's very big, January through March, is thanking major donors who made their major gift in Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? Maybe they bailed you out at an end of the year. So what are you going to do? You're going to say, thank you. You were there for us. We got hit with the COVID-19. I have a Christian university that has had to end their students and send them home. And they have been getting so many gifts, they're over budget.
Yeah.
So we talked about how we've been working for many years on their donor base and everything, and a very, very faithful group of people. And so we're saying we've got to thank them now for getting us through not only the end of COVID, but into the fall so the students can come back and we can start. Now, I take an appreciation gift. I'm going to spend a little time on this. I love these little booklets that were like God's wisdom for business success or God's wisdom for mothers. And there are different things. Maybe those are out of, not popular anymore. But, you want to get something useful like, I had a group, they're all women, and they wanted to give plants. Said, okay, but I'm not sure the men are going to appreciate plants as much. Then there are pens, then there are other things. And I'm not being sexist in it, but I'm just saying, make sure you know your donor. And my counsel was to have 3 or 4 books, because books are always a great gift, that's my opinion. But you might have one that's good for men, good for women, and good for a family or a business or whatever. And these can be devotionals. These can be, there's some great stewardship books of people who have succeeded at stewardship and stuff. And those are great books. All right. Now, that's just one other. The other is Vision for Future Ministry with a proposal, a sponsor opportunity for a project we're trying to fund, a new project, okay? And you take to them, hey, I'm just going to 5 different people. This is a new project we're trying to do, an outreach. Now, I'm going to then talk about the annual project and the general needs, better known as the budget, better known as the general fund, better known as no man's land. No one wants to give to it. All right, I'm going to try not to take too much time in this, Andrew, but I'll just tell you this. Don't use an accountant's format for showing your annual budget costs to a prospective donor. Put it into a pie chart that shows areas of ministry. Let's make it easy. You have $1 million budget. You have ministry A, ministry B, ministry C, and ministry D. Ministry A is 50%. Ministry B is 20%. Ministry C is 5%. And 5%, 5%.
Right.
Okay, you're $1 million. So now you say 50% is going to be 500,000. You write that down. 20% is 200,000. Then 5,000, 5,000, whatever it amounts to, $1 million. Now, what are you showing them? First of all, you're educating them about your program. What do we do? Here's our 5 main areas of ministry. Number 2, you're telling them of the percentage of all the work we do. Here's the percentage on A program, B program. And then it follows, how much do we have to raise every year to do that ministry? Well, it's 500,000 for our primary A, B is 200,000, and then I guess it'd be 50,000, 50,000, 50,000. Right. So you get what I'm saying. Don't use an accountant spreadsheet. Don't use a chart of accounts. Use a pie chart that shows every year what the annual fund is broken into, and you will have much more informed donors. All right. Last one.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay. I have given that and a lot of church financial guys in a church presentation where I say, rather than the number one thing on church budgets is salaries, and it gets everybody upset, break it into areas of ministry, worship ministries, Christian education, whatever, and then youth and blah, blah, blah. And then you do the same thing, percentage in dollars, and you break out the salaries of your pastors into the worship areas they work. So you're not looking at someone's salaries, you're looking at the areas of what percentage of their time they're putting into ministry. And I tell you, I've had some financial people in churches just think this was just a light bulb, because they didn't have to deal with the chart of accounts, they dealt with ministries, and that's what they communicated.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's helpful to all of you.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
All right. Now, quick sip of liquid. This is an internal management system. It's not rocket science. It doesn't have to be just this way, but this gives structure to how do we track relationships. Number one, you receive a name. All right. Anyway, here's a business card at lunch. Here's this. They came to our event. Now, pardon my age, but you set up a prospect file in the old days, was in the filing cabinet, but this is on computer on your databases. However, my younger friends, you still want to track some things by paper. You might want to file. Maybe there's something in the news. Well, here we go, newspaper. But where are you going to keep information that you learn about that donor? I'll show you how old I am. I went to the major University of Washington research department 35 years ago, and they had 3 or 4 people down in the dungeons actually reading newspapers and magazines every day for any notice of any graduate alumni of the University of Washington, a major university in Seattle. That's how they used to do it, going through plot books of who owned property and all that stuff. Now you can find all that information in a service, but you have a file. So now box 3 is research the prospect. Well, I gave you some ideas on how to do that. Call them up, ask them questions, send them a survey, different things. Now then you rate them. Now I'm going to hold off on rating because I have a form that I'm going to show you how to rate them. But it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in a capital campaign, you might assign this person to the relationship or solicitor. I don't like the word solicitor, but it would be the person. Like, say you had the executive director, you would give him or her the top 10 donors maybe. And maybe the head of the program might have 5 prospects, and you as developed might have 25. Okay, so you assign them. Now, the solicitor reads a prospect packet. What's a prospect packet? Well, we're not spending much time on the marketing materials here today, and I don't know if, Andrew, you are in the course, but basically you have a folder, the written proposal, also known as the case for support, a cover letter with the ask, and then some materials of a newsletter. Now, that's an actual physical packet you take. However, in my later days of consulting, when I had spent lots of money on printed materials for binding and all my wonderful proposals to impress people, now it's strictly a cover sheet with some logo and your proposal and some backup, and you email it all to them. But, you still can take something in your hand. Why? Because major donors are going to want to look at it. They're going to want to take it home to their family. They might share it at a board meeting. So the idea of having something physical is still a good idea. All right. Then you make your presentation. All right. You go to them, you're going to ask them, it might be a thank you. It might be, a thank you with a report of what they invested in the project, whatever. It might be that pie chart about the annual fund. After you come back, you do what's called a contact report. Now, I didn't include one, but I think there's one in the book. And it's simple. The name, where'd you go, the address you went to see them, what's the location, what did you talk about, and did you ask them for anything? And then here's the most important thing, and this works in a database. There's different names for it in the database, but it's basically, what's the next action step? Do I call them in 6 months? Do I call them in November? Do I contact them in a week to follow up on this proposal? I'm going to send them that book we talked about. I learned this about his family. Okay, so this is where computer databases are their weight in gold, is that they will then remind you, because you can't remember everything about 150 donors, major donors. You can't. All right, then you update their file, the contact report. If there's a gift or a pledge, that has to go to the accounting department, because remember, we put pledges into our database, but they only put it when it's a cash gift in accounting. So we have to make our pledges and gifts reconcile with the accounting department when it's actual fulfillment of a pledge. Then you might send them a thank you note, and then the results go to the prospect list, which we're going to talk about. All right, so that's the administrative undergirding of working with all these names. You can't remember it all in your heads, folks. Don't try. You can make a simpler system than this, cut out a couple boxes, that's fine. Maybe you have a really good database, that's fine, but don't try and remember everything yourself.
John, what are some of the donor management systems that you've, just names off the top of your head, that you've heard of that some of your clients have worked with?
Andrew, I usually avoid this question for fear of being partial, because I know so many of these, but I have to tell you, some of mine are dead and gone. That
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
I did a search in 1989 and came up with Fundmaster back then.
Right.
But there is the good ones been around are Donor Perfect. Jay Love did Bloomerang, I think it's called.
Yeah, yeah.
And what you want, folks, don't buy any system now that you have to pay exorbitant amounts of money each year. You want to get what's called a browser-based system. You don't want to have to update the software and do all that stuff. You want it all in your browser. Now, here's the thing, my faith-based friends. They will have your names and lists on their server. In the early days, that upset all our Christians that thought they were going to steal names, but they don't steal names. They take care of all the updates. They take care of all the problems because it's on site with them. So anyway, I tell you what, the place to find it would be, again, Google.
Yeah. We could help people search, but I just wanted, practical examples. And I know a number of small nonprofits will use Salesforce. I mean, Salesforce, they have a free nonprofit edition, but it isn't as customized. Yeah.
QuickBooks had a free overlay, and I liked it for a while. But here's the other thing, and I'm trying to remember them. Gosh, I'm sorry, some memory things. But there were some that if you had 500 names or less, it was free.
Yeah.
And the person that did a lot of this development was Jay Love. He developed Fundmaster. Then he was the first one to do the browser-based, and now he's kind of retired it, but he put out Bloomerang.
Yeah, Bloomerang actually puts out more content, and we actually use a good amount of their content in our course. They put out more free content than any other provider, which tells me they're probably doing pretty well right now. So
yeah, and Jay Love is on the network of donor, Instagram and fun, so Facebook and things.
Right.
So he's still in the information sharing. So you can ask him too. And the one final source. There used to be a magazine called Fundraising Management. I don't know if it's still going, but every year they did a review of the top 25 to 50 software database packages.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll let you keep going because I know we have a number of slides, and
All right.
so we can go through
Here's the rating report. Okay. It says major donor summary report, but I think I made an error with that because I'm not summarizing. This is the list. Let's say I'm the director of development, Andrew, you're the executive director, and we're going to look at your names. So under 1 through 10, we have 10 donor prospects, okay? Now, the rating, sorry about that G there, hanging there. The rating would be, do we know the area or amount they're going to give? Now, let's say they gave $50,000 2 years ago. All right, so we have that down as a history of that. Now, I'm going to come back to readiness. The focus of giving might be they love giving to program A, or they love giving to children, or they love giving to this. You might not know that, but we might know that. We put it down. The purpose of the contact would be an annual update. If they're the kind we talk to every year, it might be a first time presentation. All right, now let's go back to readiness. And there's 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now you look at the bottom. Number 1 means they're ready to be solicited, meaning asked for a gift. Very clear. Number 2, needs some cultivation. 3, needs much cultivation. 4, capable, interest unknown. So let's go through these. So if this person, Joe Smith, excuse me, he's given every year, he sits at our table at the banquet, he says, Andrew, whenever you need something, make sure you talk to me first. He's a 1. He's a 1 because he said to us, he's shown his giving, he's told you, hey, I'm ready to give. So those are the ones that are 1s. They know about our ministry, they know we're in need, they've said different things, and those would be ones that you would put under readiness. They're a 1. Now a 2, 2 and 3 have a lot of variables. It could be that they're a donor if they're 2, but it could be just smaller impulse donors. It could be that we know that they have some wealth. And I say this without being callous, but they've got the new Mercedes every year at church. We know they've made bigger gifts here, different things, but we don't think they know about our maybe we've got an aggressive plan to grow. Or like in a capital campaign, you're going to add a new building or something in your annual fund. So they may need some updating. They may need some, hey, you know what, Andrew, let's you and I have lunch with them and just find out where they're at. So a 2 means over on the right, see where it says letter, phone, a tour of our building, a proposal, other, invite them to become a board member. You know, so these are some of the cultivation strategies. So if someone's a 2, we have to decide what we're going to do. Are we going to make it 2? Let's give them a tour of the facility, but it's going to be future when we ask them. Now a 3 is someone that might know about our ministry, but otherwise knows nothing about us. Okay. They might be a Christian in the community. They might be a Christian in the country if you're a regional or national ministry. Number 4 is what we call our Bill Gates. Number 4 is, you know, they have the money, but they have no clue who we are. Okay, by going through these 10, you know, maybe you don't know if they've given 5,000, 1,000, but it might be we'll start with 1,000 or some. Then you have the rating and what they give to. Let's say Mr. Smith, his wife, always likes to give to the children. Or, you know, if you have a cancer wing in your hospital, these kind of things. So then you rate them. Now, here's what you do. You change by being an Excel spreadsheet. You go by the the readiness column, put the 1s first, the 2s second, the 3s next, and the 4s at the bottom. What have you just done? You've given yourself a plan of attack. I'm going to call the ones who are most likely to give first, and I'm going to spend more time with the 1s and 2s than I am with the 3s and 4s. Why? Because the 3s and 4s are not necessarily going to give right now. It's going to be a longer term cultivation. All right, so that's a brief discussion of this tool as you look at actual names and start to put the strategy down. Andrew.
Yeah, this is very helpful. I imagine some of the better donor management systems could have something like this built in, but just showing a basic spreadsheet, I think, is really good. So, yeah,
yes.
Thanks.
Now, remember, I'm old and came from before. So when I was working with these on the airplanes going home, I was trying to find a logic that was basic and not overkill.
Right.
So this is the step as you go rating, readiness, doom, doom. And I do it a little different for campaigns. However, 2 things. Your database may do this where it does 75 to 90% of this, but not all of it.
Yeah, and the reality is, if this is going to determine, you know, as you talked about, a major donor officer who might meet with 150 people, you know, it's more important that your list is accurate and is sorting the way you want it to than that you put it in some sort of donor management system. So sometimes simpler is better. So.
And now I'm going to say the opposite point. If you get 75 to 90% of it right using your database, do that, and then by hand you're going to fill in these other things.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
So it's one of those things that most of the databases allow you to not only do what are they, a standard report, but they allow you to adjust as well and create your own reports. So the better you get at that, the more you can make this. Because, well, let me just say, in a capital campaign, I'm in a room with 15 to 20 leaders of the community to help us look at the major donor, the lead gifts. I'm going to take the computer printout and I'm going to put it into this format. Why? Because I don't want different types of business people trying to figure out a database report. I want them to see something like Excel spreadsheets that they can see very clearly, very quickly. All right.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Now, this is a favorite of mine. Now, you see, are our pictures blocking any of these?
I can try to move it down in case
Well,
it
I
is.
just moved it down. Did
Yeah.
that do it?
Okay. I think this will move it down on my side so it won't get blocked.
All right. The reason I say that now, when I was doing a special event, again, I don't need to do too much history, but I said, how can I make this not just special event after special event after special event? So I said, all right, we got to get more focus. So here's what I said. You start with the left box, purpose, and then you go to the right box, outcomes. Now look at the logic and connection between those two. First of all, with your purpose, you have to decide, let's say it's an annual banquet in October, okay? You might have 50 people, 150, 500 people, whatever. You have to prioritize those 4 boxes. You have to do it. You can't beg off. So is it fundraising? Is it appreciation for our people? Is it to inspire them, an inspiring speaker? Or is it just to have awareness of we're just trying to build awareness? Okay, you get it? So let's say you say, okay, we're short of money. Fundraising is the first. We got a really great speaker. We're going to inspire them and then appreciate them, then awareness. Okay, so if fundraising is first, over under outcomes, what is our top priority? Gift income. Now, in other times under fundraising, we say, we need new partners. We need monthly partners. Under appreciation and awareness, we need, or the other 3, we need ownership. We need our people to know the ministry better. We might say, look, there are 5 organizations in our state like us. We need to position in the marketplace with the right people. And the final one, we just need people to increase their giving. You know, they've been giving the same amount for 5 years. We need to have a compelling message as to why you should increase your monthly gift or your annual gift. So you see what I did? If you analyze any of those 4 on the left under purpose and combine it with the desired outcomes on the right, boxes in between will flow logically. So we'll stick with the fundraising one. All right, so let's say it's fundraising. We need to raise some new partners. Well, I guess new partners would be new people, not just monthly partners, but new people. So we'd look at under management, we'd have to do, well, who are we inviting there? What's the location? Now, I'm going to give an example where I live. I'm in the Seattle area. And when I started working for a Christian ministry, I worked in Bellevue. There are bridges over to Seattle. And from Bellevue, in the day when I was there 30 years ago, you could leave after work, pick up your spouse, babysitter, drive into Seattle, go to one of the big hotels for a nice banquet. Well, this is 30 years later, and that's now such a hassle of traffic on the bridge, such a hassle finding parking. So some Bellevue hotels have been built, many have been built, and now they stay in Bellevue. So location makes a difference. It's almost like now you need to have an event in Seattle and Bellevue because the 2 sides won't drive to the other. Now that's just a location issue, but you may have other issues. Then you look at your database. Who do we have? What kind of information? You design the invite accordingly. The registration process and mail date. Now, one of the things we do to manage this is we look at 1 year before the event. Yes, 1 year for getting a location. Maybe we have a speaker coming in, all those kind of things. So we look under sponsorships or table hosts. How do we do it? Who's our target market? Do we have sponsor levels like $100, $500, $1,000 for the table? What do they get? Is it a business thing? And then we have hosts. And they may say, a host says, well, I'm paying for all 8 at my table. I'm going to host it. Well, then guess what? That affects the registration process. So that person comes in and we have all their other names that they've already paid for before the event. So we make sure we don't lose their names. All right, now the program. Being a musician and doing a lot of musical programs and a lot of worship leading, the flow of the program is very important to me. Is there a VIP reception? Maybe you have, I remember one time with this organization I worked with, they brought in Bill Bennett, and he had just written that big book on, I can't remember what it was, a big, thick yellow book of stories and stuff. And he came early, and to the major donors, we got a signed copy before the event. That was cool. So then you have your program. You have an MC, Master of Ceremonies, a speaker, and the challenge. I don't call it the offering anymore. This is an event to challenge people to give. So how you do this, the order of where do you put testimonies? I believe they should be in the program. The MC guides you through it. And then if the executive director speaks, fine. But after, I think the speaker that's going to be, and whether that's the executive director is the main speaker, fine. But after you build a momentum to a peak is when you do the challenge. You don't do testimony, this, that, and emotionally go up and down. You want to build momentum to the challenge. And then I have a whole script I train people with to come out and say, thank you for this. Thank you for the testimonies. Now it's our turn tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We have a goal of $75,000 to raise. And as you can see by our table sponsors and your tickets buying the meal, we're already at $30,000 of our goal. Now I'm going to do a timeout here, Andrew. Never say that because you bought a ticket or we have sponsored, you paid for the meal. No one cares to pay for the meal. That's an accountant's thinking. You want to say, how much of our goal have you given to? So if you buy a ticket for $25 each, $50, and you get all the tickets and you get sponsors, you count that towards the $75,000 goal for the evening. Why? Because who cares if you're buying a meal? That's a transaction. That's not a gift. So you just say, we're already this far towards our goal. And the momentum now is the challenge of how much more we need to raise. So remember, they'll know, okay, I bought this meal. That didn't go anywhere towards the need. Well, it's a psychological thing. So anyway, then final thing, follow up, make sure you have your responses ready. Thank yous, a follow up. You might put on your response form, I want to meet with the executive director, or I want to do the request to have a tour of the building. There's 5 responses. Thank you for coming and for your gift. Thank you for coming and your pledge. Thank you for your coming with your pledge and the first gift on that. Thank you for coming but no gift. And thank you for a reservation and sorry you couldn't be there. So that's 5 different topics to be ready to get out within how fast? Well, some like to get it within 24 to 48 hours, others within the first week, but don't let the response be later than that. Okay, so now you can see I've taken apart the whole logic of a special event and dug down into the psychology and management of each one. And so like I said, you can plan a year before, then you can do 8 months, 6 months, 4 months, 2 months, 8 weeks on down. and you can have a team work through these things. Andrew, any questions?
No, this is great practical stuff. I want you to just be able to keep going. Thanks.
All right. Let me press. I'm pressing the button, but it's not.
You might have to click on the screen again. Sometimes if you get clicked off the
With the
screen.
pictures.
Yep,
There we
there
go.
you go.
All right. Now, switching to, excuse me, capital campaigns. This is a capital campaign organizational chart, which is different than, oops, I was going to move these back up here, which is different than your annual fund. And that's the main reason I want you to understand. You have the board of directors, then you might have a chair of the campaign or an honorary chair or co-chairs. To the left, I always put a prayer support committee for every one of my campaigns. And then I'm counsel off to the right. Then we put together the leadership team. The leadership team is the executive director, the campaign director, which many times is the director of development, which manages all the activity. And then I usually have representatives of the staff, usually of the program and maybe finance, but the leaders, the executive team. And then I have representation from the board of directors, usually just 2 to 3 board members. If you have a board of 12 or more, just 2 to 3, and they become the subcommittee for the board on the capital campaign. Okay. Now, the two main areas of the capital campaign, well, are you start from the top of the donor pyramid. Remember, I showed you in the donor pyramid, you started from the bottom with impulse donors, monthly donors, and major donors. That's the common way to do your annual fund. Capital campaign is just the opposite. You start with leadership gifts here at the bottom through the steering committee, which are your community leaders, for gifts above 100,000, then strategic gifts and major gifts. So basically gifts $10,000 and above are done through personal proposals and contacts with your leadership team and steering committee. Now, I'm not going to take the time because there's so much to learn about a capital campaign, but I just want to show you then, when you get to ask for gifts near the bottom of the donor pyramid, now you're into the impulse donors, $10,000 and below. So you have an advisory committee. What are they? Those are people that have endorsed the campaign in your community, and they've lended their name or position to your letterhead or any of those kind of things. And this is where you do the smaller activities like a banquet or like a church campaign. Go speaking at the churches every Sunday all over the place. And you might have then a direct mail appeal. You might have a phone-a-thon. You might have a golf tournament. You get me? So that's the basic outline of how you put a campaign together. So the signs of a failed capital campaign are those that start with friends and special gifts first. They fail if you go from the bottom up. And I don't have the chart, but there's 3 phases to a campaign: the planning phase, then the quiet leadership phase, which is the leadership strategic major gifts. That's the quiet leadership phase. And then the public phase is the special and friends. So basically, if you start with the public phase first, you will fail. You are to start with the planning phase. That's the whole top half of all these people. And then you start meeting with people at the quiet leadership phase, meaning you don't go out in the public, you talk to people one-on-one. So that's a brief overview of a capital campaign structure and how it differs from the annual fund.
Yeah, thanks again, John. This is very helpful. And I realize that there's whole books and, capital campaigns is a huge field. And a lot of times organizations will work with consultants on capital campaigns too. So.
Yeah, they 95% do. But the thing I want you to know in this class is mainly, how is a capital campaign different than the annual fund? That's what you must know. You don't need to know the details of the capital campaign, but you just need to know the basic principles, how it differs from the annual fund.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Oh, come on. All right. Now, this is called a table of gifts. It can be used for a capital campaign, big numbers, or it can be used for the annual fund. If it's 100,000, 500,000, maybe your budget's 2 million, okay? And what this is an Excel type structure of the donor pyramid. Let that settle in a little bit. So to reach a goal of $1 million in this sample, I need one gift of $150,000. Now, the reason this might be a campaign is because we do 3-year pledges. So that could be $50,000 a year for 3 years. All right, but it could be the annual fund too. Then I need one gift for $100,000. I need 2 gifts at 75. Now, we're at 75. Let's go to the right. So with those 4 gifts, 1, 2, 3, 4, I am at $400,000. So with 4 gifts, I'm at, I was a music major, not a math major, but I believe that's 40%. 40% of the goal from the top 4 gifts. And that's how a campaign works, and that's how an annual fund works in terms of focusing the right amounts. Now, you can take 1 0 off of all of these in the middle and be for $15,000, $10,000. It's the same principle. Now, you may say, but John, the largest gift we've ever gotten is $10,000. Okay, let's start with the lead gift being $10,000. What happens then? Everything down below adjusts. Now, Andrew has this spreadsheet, and there's formulas in here. So every time you change one of the number of gifts needed or change the amount, everything on the right will adjust. Am I correct, Andrew? You have that one with formula?
Yeah. In the course, we have all the spreadsheets that are used in this presentation
Good.
that are available in the template.
So,
Yeah.
so what you'll do is if you say, well, 150,000, you start with what you think your lead gift is, and then you play with it a bit. You look at, well, do we have $15,000 donors? Do we have some prospects for this? And that's how, but this tool rather, should help you, whether it's the annual fund or a capital campaign.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks.
All right. Now, this is, and I'm sorry I didn't get it corrected. It is not the development goals template. It is the development report. This is a reporting process. Okay. Now, remember over on the left, I have major donors, core donors, impulse donors, and new donors. Okay. Then, so those are your 4 areas that you need to be structured in for your development strategic plan. Within those now are strategies. All right, so let's look at this. For this organization, we're going to say personal contacts. We're going to have major donor events. What are major donor events? Well, it's where we maybe have 5 to 10 people in someone's home, or we do something with this, but it's smaller and it's more focused. Mail. Well, maybe we do a special major donor update quarterly, 4 times a year. That's written on A6 letterhead from the desk of Andrew Sears, president. Okay. We might have proposals to local businesses and corporations. Don't forget the local businesses. We might be getting gifts from the Rotaries and the Kiwanis. I know all those things are changing, but my campaign down in Florida, they just got a $40,000 pledge to redo the roof of their mission from 4 or 5 Rotary groups that all came together. And then foundations. Okay, remember, foundations are major donors. Let that think in. Foundations are major donors, but they tell you how they want to be approached. Whereas individuals, you have to find out. The major donors, the foundations either put it online, fill this out, or write a proposal like this. In the old days, they'd say, don't send VCR copies. The minute you sent a copy of that, they threw it away. When you make a mistake with what they say, you're just giving them an opportunity not to have to look at your proposal. All right, monthly partners. Basically, how many are there? Did you have a special event for them? Now, what are special appeals? Special appeals are when you have a urgent situation. I'll just give a little aside. There are urgent situations and there are crisis situations. Here's the definition, like in a letter. Urgent is we really need help with this or it could hurt our program. Crisis is if we don't raise this money, we will have to cut this program. And donors respect the differences between the two. So don't cry wolf by calling crisis when really it's an urgency, okay? Now, so that's what a special appeal is. They're given monthly, you say, John, don't ask it. No, remember, they're faithful givers. And if they've been given to you for 5 years and you have a crisis, they want to know about it and they want to give to it, okay? They don't want you cutting a program without coming to them first. All right, then impulse donors, we send appeals, we have events, projects, white mail. Golly gee, I don't know if this is even used anymore, but back in the day when we received the bulk of our gifts from the Postal Service, there was what was called a white envelope that didn't have any of our information on it from a mailing. No response device, no this, no newsletter response. It was a white envelope. We called that white mail. In the days that I was doing this, we would get hundreds of thousands of dollars in gifts from white mail. I don't think that happens anymore today, but there you go.
John, just so I'm clear, is the difference on white mail just where people randomly send you a check and it's not a response envelope?
Right.
And you're saying that most people have switched to sending you something electronically if they're going to do that, so they're not doing white mail as much.
That, and because we know that BREs, business reply envelopes and stuff, are so successful,
right?
They might have 4 or 5 of them saved up and they use one then.
Yeah, I got you.
So
Now,
there's just less white mail.
one other thing that I wanted to ask you about, for the people who are your monthly partners, what portion are doing some sort of automated, credit card or bank drawdown? Is it generally, like 90+% rather than people?
Here's what it is. If you started your monthly partner program before, should we say 2005, 2000, you included mail. So you had mail responses, but remember, we didn't send them coupons like the old churches did. We reminded them every month with a letter, with a response device. So there is that. But anything I think past 2000, 2005 that I've worked with, they start with credit card and ACH. They don't.
So pretty much all of them now is what.
Well, any that are new programs, but I have missions that have been doing monthly partner programs for 20 years.
Right. Yeah.
And here's the thing. Let me say this on this point. When you have X number of partners, let's say you have 50 of them are still using the mail.
Right.
And you have 2,000, 5,000 that are doing credit card, ACH, all those kind of things, maybe even through, I don't know, Facebook or what are those things. Don't worry about those 200 people. Most likely they're older. They don't like giving their credit card. Sure, I mean, I figured out that it costs you like $10 to $13 every time you get a check in the mail, that you've got to process it and staff time and all this stuff. So I've used, you will save the ministry money if you go to this bank, going directly from your account.
Right. Yeah.
But, and most of the people of that were skeptical. I mean, I literally taught seminars in the day where I'd say, okay, how many of you would never use your credit card over the internet? And I'd always have 2 or 3 people that would raise their hand. I would never trust them, and now the statistics are totally upside down.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, it's just something that I would, you set up the program to go strictly digital. You don't even offer the other one.
Yeah. So one thing, just to comment, John, for the students, I'm encouraging them to use this both as a goals template and as a reporting template. So whenever they go through their project, this year to date and last year to date is where they could put their goals, right?
Actually, projections and budget is where they'll put their goals.
Yeah. That's what I meant. Sorry.
All right. So here's what we have. We have 2 sections to measure the results of your development work. The left 4 columns are number of gifts. Okay, how many did you get? And the right amount, the blue ones, the first 4 are dollar amounts. So this month we got 4 gifts. Compared to last month, we got 2. This year today we have 15, whereas last year today at this time we only had 10. Now those total $32,000 last year, blah blah blah. This year to date, last year. You might say our budget is, it could be the annual budget or it could be the monthly budget, and then the projection, maybe the projection. I can't remember all the discussions. Sometimes those are two different numbers. Sometimes they're the same. But here's the thing I wanted to, show you, everybody. In 2008, we had a recession. And so using this report, what did we see? We saw a decline in the number of major donor gifts. But over in the blue, we saw an increase in the dollar amounts given. What does that show you? Well, I'm not going to make Andrew answer, but it showed two things. Number one, we had some donors who could no longer give because of recession. Number two, but the ones who were faithful gave more because they knew we needed assistance. And here's the third thing we learned, which is based on number one. We started calling the people that didn't give a gift that had before just to see if they were okay. Remember, that was about a 3 or 4 year recession,
Right.
and people had their business go down, and they felt terrible that they couldn't help our ministry. So we assured them we were fine, but were they okay? Maybe some of you with the COVID-19 want to take it. Maybe you're fine already. Like my one college, their gifts went up, and all they did was tell them. We decided not to ask. We just told them all the students had to go home. And for that, this type of ministry, that was a difficult deal because many of the students were in difficult places, living in difficult, extreme places. So anyway, the gifts have poured in. So, all right. So what you're getting at now in each of these is number of gifts in those 4 columns, where you look at how are people responding to our strategies in the major, monthly. Now, core donors, if you have 225 monthly partners, that should really stay at 225 every month. So if there's someone that drops out of that, you will probably check on it if they go a couple months and don't give. Just say, hey, did something happen?
Yeah.
Are you okay? I didn't say, hey, you better ante up. I never did that. Some people send them out reminder letters saying you're this many behind in your monthly gifts. I don't do that, but others might, because they depend on that cash and that giving. All right, and then the other, of course, is the dollar amounts. Now, let me tell you this, everyone who works in development, this is an excellent report to teach your executive director and your board about development and what's important. They may just look at the bottom line. They may say, well, why didn't you get that gift or this? This is where you teach them the difference between the number of gifts and the dollar amounts, and then how does that deal with budget and where we're projecting to go over the next 2-3 years.
Right.
So you can really use this as a teaching tool going up. And I've experienced sometimes executive directors and board members think they know more than you because they used to do development before they hired you, and now they want to tell you how to evaluate everything. They might not be up to date with the latest things. Since you're taking this course and you're going to be so much smarter, is to use this report up in your organization with your executive director and your board members.
Yeah, this is helpful. I assume that those percentages of what a healthy breakdown would be, and obviously this varies from organization. You said 10% major donors, 20% monthly donors, 30 to 40% impulse donors, and then 30 to 40% lapsed non-donors. That's probably a rough idea if someone's building this from scratch. The first thing they would do, right, is look at what their last year to date was, right, and then they're going to build it based on that.
Well, Andrew, an important thing in your point and where you're going is how many strategies are we doing?
Right.
That's what's important. If you can only do 2 of these in your donors and you do 1 here, maybe you can't start the monthly program till a year from now.
Right.
So remember, when you talk about donor pyramid percentages, that's a goal.
Yeah.
But it becomes reality when you use this report and start to build your strategies
Right. And
and
I
add
think,
your strategies.
yeah, I think the reason why that's helpful is, you know, the early thing, a young organization is probably going to start with a lot of impulse donors. And you want to, if you understand what percentage should be converting to monthly donors and major donors, it helps you think about, oh, well, we had 1,000 impulse donors last year. We had 5 monthly donors and 5 major donors. You know, you probably could convert some of those impulse donors over. So it helps you think about that strategically, I think, right?
Right. And now we're going to go to how you deal with that. Now, I'm sorry, this is really small, but you'll get a printed copy, right?
Yeah, this is a part of the spreadsheet that we provide the students.
Now, I let me just check one more thing. No. Okay. In my development strategic plan, there are, as you've seen many of these charts, the first one is important. Then, oh, it's not included here, but the projections, then this one, then this one. So what I'm saying, there are 3 or 4 key charts that make up your plan, okay? And here's the point on this one. Look how many strategies there are. This is for like a $3 to $10 million rescue mission, let's say. No, let's not say that. Let's say and reason is because of what's not filled in. But anyway, you see the major donors. What did I say the theme should be right after the first year? Thank you. And then look at September through October through December of the personal contact. Do we have touches with the top 100 of our donors? That's for the fall. Now you can see under the executive director update, 4 update letters under major donors. Now monthly partners, this is where we were dealing with mail, where we reminded them every month and they had a tear-off coupon to send in. You won't do that. So it's a different strategy if you're on the web with them, where you might do an email every month, or you might do a report to the monthly partners where the email sends them to the website for a story. Okay?
Yep.
And then you have impulse donors, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 appeals. 7 appeals. And then they have 2 events. And then they have a small business strategy, a web strategy, a newsletter, matching gifts, radio, TV, phone-a-thon, clubs, organizations. And if, web would be now called social media. Sorry, old term. But basically all the social media things. Now under new donors, are you going to rent lists for appeals? A very successful one has been ads in newspapers in major cities. Space ads where you used to buy them inside the newspaper packs. I don't know if they do that anymore. And then you're definitely going to have web things on there, things on your website to attract new donors, first-time donors. And then we have down at the bottom, plant giving. Are we going to send out information on our wills and trusts if you have that strategy? But that would not be for a beginner. So you notice, if this was a beginning organization, we have 1, 2, the year-end tax letter. That's a letter that I sent to them in the first part of December saying, for your year-end giving, we hope that you remember us.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, that's 2.5 strategies for major donors. If you look at core donors, there's 1.5. They have an open house. If you look at impulse donors, there's 2 strategies, appeals and events, and then new donors, I don't have any there. But if you look at this and you would add some new donor ones, those are doable for a small or startup organization. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not doing 10 strategies. It's just doing key ones that you can be successful at. And you're putting them in the month that you're going to do them. Now, why is that important? This is not a management calendar. In other words, it's not going to say May 12th, this goes out. This is a planning calendar for how do we know we're making touches with our impulse donors? When are we making touches with our major donors? How are we doing it? And it lays it out. And then you go to the financial goals and the other things like that. This is um, moving to how do I say it? But basically, the calendar of when you're going to do things.
Yeah, yeah. And so for our students, I think they would customize this so that some of these projects that you have listed, they might change. So say someone's frequently speaking at local churches, you might add that to your new donor activity, right?
Well, see,
And
I have church strategy here. Whoops.
okay, well that it would be for attracting major donors, right?
Well, well,
I was talking about new donors. I guess it depends on what you're trying to do.
exactly. This is the one that's the most difficult because a church strategy is not an impulse strategy. We're not just sending them letters. We have
Right.
to go and make a presentation to their missions board
Yeah.
or meet with the pastor or get to talk in the pulpit or get to put something in their bulletin. So in actuality, a church strategy, how you do it is more like a major donor than it is an impulse.
Yeah.
Yet
Okay.
it is an acquisition strategy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that makes sense in terms of partners. But another example could be someone who's going to speak at a local event or at a conference or something like
Yeah,
that.
and
Different
and
acquisition strategies.
that's down there under clubs and organizations. But again,
Okay, got you.
you can rewrite any of those.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
remember, if you write something under new donors, you have to explain how it's done. Like appeals is just and newspapers is a shotgun,
right. Yeah.
whereas presenting to a church or a rotary or a conference, yeah.
Okay, great.
All right.
All right, thank you.
All right. Starting to wind down now is if any of you are in a process of, well, how do I hire? How do I um, look at designing the structure? And so this is what I've given you is the board of directors has oversight, leadership when talking with about development and stewardship, and they can be assigned specific tasks like getting their company to be a sponsor at the annual banquet. The CEO, executive director out to the right, still the leader of the organization, management of the director of development, and is assigned specific tasks with major donors. Over to the left is the development committee. Now, under boards, I recommend starting with 3 committees. The first one is program, the second one is development, and the third is finance. And we tend to do that just the opposite. Finance first, and then development, and then we don't have a program committee. I believe a program committee, the board's role is to know, is the mission statement being carried out? That's the program committee. Development is how do we raise funds for it? And finance is how are we good stewards of what we raise? So I have a philosophy that way. Now, next is the director of development, leadership, strategic planning, and if assigned major donors. If you have room, I did at my organization, we were a $5 million budget, so I had an associate director of development. Now, I still manage the team. Now, development associates, I call them. And so again, the associate director of development, you can take out, that's for a large program. The director of development can be hands-on on all these. But you look at direct marketing, special events, major donors, community relations, and volunteers. Now, what do you see in each of those? Well, what you should see are skill sets. Someone in direct marketing, appeals, writing, monthly partners, writing, newsletter, writing. Special events, golf tournaments, banquets, projects. That's a gregarious person who is good at details. Major donors. Now, this could be a major donor rep, or it could be the database person that is preparing all the major donors for the director of development and the executive director. And then you have the other 2 over on the right. Now, development associates have responsibilities. Development assistants, donor relations, systems, and support, they are, I'm trying to forget the word, they are support. They do what they are told or strategies they are given. So when you write job descriptions, make sure you're very clear between a director of development, a development associate, and a development assistant. That's, I think, the key nugget you should get from this, because if not, you put out a job description that's not clear on its parameters, and you'll get everybody and their uncle applying for it.
Yeah. Now, John, let's talk about how organizations go through stages of development on something like this. So obviously, very young organization, the executive director is going to do most of the development, and then eventually they would hire a part-time or full-time director of development, or that might be, shared duty. After you get a full-time director of development, what would be your next recommended hire?
You look at income producing strategies.
Yep.
And you look at the donor pyramid.
Okay.
And if I'm well, let's take it this way. The CEO started the organization, knew all the donors.
Right.
Who do they handle? They hire a director of development, and they go up the donor pyramid.
Yep.
They aren't still doing direct mail. You hire someone to do those below you, and you move up the relationship ladder.
Right.
The same is true now. And let's say I'm director of development, and my direct mail program and mailing program has just become cumbersome. It's making money, but there's too many deadlines. I can't get them all. So yeah. I would hire an income producing person probably to do the direct marketing. Okay, now, gotcha. If you can only hire one person, guess what you're hiring? You're hiring the direct marketing and the special events person as one.
Yeah.
They're doing both.
Right.
The next priority probably would be community relations. Why? Because you're working with media. It's serious today. You're working with the church, and you may be a marketing expertise. So direct marketing, special events, and community relations really integrate with each other, yep. Right?
Yeah.
And then the next one would be volunteers. Depending on who you are, can you use volunteers? Do they really help you? You need someone to manage volunteers. And I think there's a whole section in the book on how to really recruit, manage, and appreciate. I think those are the three categories we use for volunteers, because those are gifts of time and talent.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, John.
All right. Are we near the end? No, not quite.
We got just a couple more, I think, and then I think we're done.
All right. This is, I always said, we can't get our board to give. We can't get our board to do this. We can't get, I said, teach them how stewardship is the part of every board member. In other words, the board's role in all training is to safeguard the mission, right? The second thing is to make sure the mission is funded. All right, and so the goal is, what is it? Out to the right here, 100% board involvement in development. But remember that evil sin I told you? It applies to the board as well. One size does not fit all. The big mistake is when you say, I need $100 from every board member for our annual banquet to be sponsor hosts. It just isn't fair to a steward, like it says in Deuteronomy. You should give him proportion to the way the Lord your God has blessed you. For some, that could be $1,000 and you're only asking them for $100. That's not right. So I created this: prayer support, an annual single gift, a monthly partner. They will host a table at something. Their business will sponsor something. Maybe they know some major donors. Maybe they're in that world. Maybe they want to sit down with you, that form that we went through, the rating 1, 2, 3, 4, and they want to assist in the research and rating. Maybe they say, okay, we're talking to so-and-so who owns this company, and I'm his vice president. I'm going to go with you, a donor call. Or I'm going to say, I'm going to introduce you to 2 of my business friends and my pastor this year, or something else. Now, let me just say, under prayer support, I don't put it there so every good little Christian checks it. I get serious about, are you a prayer warrior? Because I'm not always a good prayer warrior. I don't say, I'll pray for you, unless I'm really going to. I don't like that, just, I'll pray for you. So that's just a key thing in me. Maybe it's my boomer in me. But that is a real challenge to them. Are they going to pray for the ministry as part of their gift? And in one of my books, I talk about we are to steward our faith. We are to steward the gospel. It's not just time, talent, and treasure. All right. So I will end on this now. As you look back now and look at the organizational vision, which the board and the executive director lays out, and the training, and now all the segmentation and the difference between these major donors and monthly core donors and impulse donors and new donors, and you look, wow, that really does present. If I do one strategy in each one of those boxes, I have a comprehensive integrated strategy. Now, I have to tell you something, and let me just stop right here and say, if you want to edit this out, this would be a spot, is I did not include the 5-year projected income. I believe it's in the book, but that is a tool that I missed. And that is where you take your strategies and put it for year 1, and then you show the growth for 5 years, and you project it out. And with that tool, Andrew and class, is when you look like, oh, we need to grow our direct mail. That's how we hire someone. We look where we need an income increase.
Yeah.
Or we need a major donor rep. And then that goes down to the annual one, the calendar, which you saw, and the reports. But I did not put in this plan, in this training, the 5-year projected income. And Andrew will make it available to you, either if it's in the book or I'll get it to him and he'll get it to you.
Yeah, if I can get a copy of the spreadsheet, then I'll go ahead and include that. And, just to tie this together, a lot of these slides correlate to boxes on here. And, I think what makes this presentation, John, really, really helpful is, in a book, you can, you have to use mostly words, right, in a book. And this is intended to be a complement because it's providing two things. One is just expounding on the real nuts and bolts, what it looks like on the ground for some of these diagrams. But, we're giving students these spreadsheets so that they can actually build using the spreadsheets. And that's harder to do with a book too. So I think this is a good complement to the book. I think the book is amazing. I think adding this video to the book really helps a lot. And if any of the students want to get a hold of John, or if your organization ever wants to work with him in terms of coaching or consulting, his email is at the beginning of this video. You said johnrfrank@johnrfrank.com. Is that right?
Right, and it's all online. It's all online consulting.
Yeah. So we really appreciate. Yeah, go ahead.
Thing, Andrew, I just want to say, to add to what Andrew was summarizing, is remember to keep it simple. And if you look at this, say, I can't do donor research, segmentation, or this, fine. Don't worry about those boxes and go to the 4 strategies that you do know something about. Remember, these are tools, but you don't have to use every box. If you need to simplify something, simplify it.
Yeah, and City Vision is a smaller organization, so a lot of these things, I'd love to have an org chart with that big of a development department, right? And a lot of the smaller organizations are probably saying the same thing. But I think that having a long-term plan and understanding, okay, here's what we can do. John, I did want to ask one other thing is, in terms of accountability and stewardship and fundraising, I know that there's kind of like, what percentage are you looking for in terms of return on investment? So, what's considered good stewardship for an organization? How much does it spend to raise each dollar?
Okay.
So for the clients you're working with, what are they targeting?
Yeah,
in terms of?
I'm going to answer that in 2 ways. First, remember, people, that to measure development, as we believe relations are important, you do have the end result numbers, but the other measurement is the process.
Right.
So processing, when you give your report to the board, give them a stewardship testimony.
Yeah.
Give them a story of someone says, I give to your ministry and here's what God does. That's one thing. Now, to the more complex answer. The Better Business Bureau accepts between 20 and 35% fundraising and administration. Yep. Now, let me clarify. That's not stewardship, which includes PR and church relations. That's pure fundraising, not newsletters, but pure fundraising. Administration is pure administration, not because someone types at the computer their administration, but only working on things like, the budgets and the payroll and all those administrative functions. If someone's working on a computer, but it's for program, that goes under program.
Right.
So with 20 to 35%, they want the program percentage to be between 65 and 80% of every dollar
Yeah.
should go to program.
Yeah.
Okay?
So
So
that's
let's get a bit,
combining the admin. What percentage are you looking for the fundraising component of that?
I'm coming to that.
Okay.
So now you understand what the Better Business Bureau, my mentor in finance always said, try and have administration be in single digits,
Yeah.
meaning 9% or less. So if you're at 20% administration and fundraising, and let's say you're 8% administration, you're at about 12% fundraising. Now, what are the norms for fundraising? The norms are this. As I don't think you should be lower than 14% fundraising percentage. And I think your max generally, believe it or not, I saw a major ministry where they're reporting a 34% fundraising cost. So that's high, but I recommend from a low of 14 and a high in the 25 to 30%.
Okay, that's really helpful because I
Yeah.
mean, for a lot of ministries, they want to be as low as possible in fundraising, but to a certain extent, that's kind of like saying, "Well, I'm a farmer and I'm going to save money by not planting seeds." So
Well,
that's not good
also,
stewardship, right?
Andrew,
So
I'm not going to mention names, but a number of years ago, a very famous radio person said to the head of ECFA, well, our fundraising costs were only 5%, and we think every ministry should ask, you donors should ask every one of your ministries if your fundraising is over 5%. It caused an uproar. The reason was they had a whole nother area that they raised money through that they didn't count as fundraising. They counted it as
right.
other names, which
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it. Sometimes organizations can do funny math and things along these
well,
lines, but
yeah, but
I'm talking about even internal stewardship,
right, right,
without doing the funny math. Like it one, I was talking with one rescue mission. I think they had about a 10 or $15 million budget, and they're like, well, we could easily grow our budget to 20 million, but that's going to make our percentage spent on fundraising go up a lot higher because the return on investment is going to decrease. And they said, we're not going to do that because that's not good stewardship. And I thought, if I could double my budget between 10 million to 20 million, would I have that much integrity to say I'm not going to do it? And I think
well,
that
but see,
was a testament to their integrity, right?
but I don't know. From my experience, I would probably say I'm not sure they're doing the right strategies to go.
Well, I think they're already at 20 or 25%. So I
Yeah,
think that would have put them over 35%, which,
it depends.
yeah,
You can, if you have donors giving you $100,000 and they're in that stratosphere, that's low. Major donors, here's another. I'll answer it another way. When you look at direct mail and special events, they can be anywhere from a low of 20 to 50% fundraising costs
right.
for
Yeah.
those strategies. Monthly partners now, who are all digital and bank, they're as low as 2 to 5% fundraising
Okay.
cost.
Yeah.
You get into major donors, depending upon your strategy, if you have to travel, what you do, they might be 5 to 10%
Okay.
fundraising costs.
Yeah.
So if that organization said we're going to just double our direct mail and special event strategy, well, shame on them. They're just doing the high cost ones.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So,
so it's not a black and white answer is my answer.
okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, John. This has been extremely helpful. And I appreciate all the tools that you provided our students. And I think this is going to make a big difference with a lot of organizations.
I hope so. And again, like you said, they can ask you a question. They can email me a question. We're there to help.
Okay. Thank you.